Welcome to GoVMlab, India's first job-ready VMware learning platform where professionals meet experts to revolutionize their VMware careers.
Now the next is basically determining if my ESXi host is restarted by ILO. As I mentioned, right, you might restart your ESXi host not from your vSphere client, DCUI, or maybe your shell, but you can do this power cycle kind of stuff from the ILO itself, right? So if you do see that this is our Dell ID rack, there I have this is my ESXi console, which you do see that virtual console, right? If you have ever interacted with the ILO or ID rack kind of stuff, right there you have a power on off option. So if admin is actually rebooting that server from this ILO event, then you would be seeing this particular information in your vmkernel.log file, and there would be something like called power button pressed. Look at that. It gives you such a crisp information. Power button has pressed and it is requesting for graceful shutdown and power off, right? And now if you do see that, it also says that host has booted. So now it tells you very clearly that this power thing has been happened, not from your, what do you say, that it is not being happened from your vSphere client or anything else, but it has been happened from your ILO event, right? So that way you can actually go and figure it out that who is the source of these shutdown or restart or power cycle operations. This is a very corner case where you do see that it says that this is a very corner case where a reboot or shutdown will not be logged in vmksummary.log. Yeah, exactly. This is very important point to know that if your ESXi host reboot is happening using this ID rack, using this ILO, this particular event will not be logged in your summary.log file. So if you are only relying on vmksummary.log file to identify the root cause for the ESXi host reboot, you will not be able to identify it if the reboot has been instantiated or initiated from your ID rack or ILO. The vmkernel.log is the only log file which will be logging that particular event about your ESXi host reboot or restart. Now the next, what do we have it is PSOD. So I think this is what we call as a purple screen of death. These are the most well-known unexpected ESXi restart, because I think whatever we have discussed so far, we have discussed about our expected reboot, our deliberated reboot. The reboot, what I have initiated it deliberately, but there could be many reasons where you don't even know why my ESXi host got rebooted because of unknown reasons. And one of the very common unknown reason is PSOD, where your kernel is crashing. So as you could see that this is one of the screenshot, as you could see that where my kernel has crashed, and it's running 6.7 version, as you do see that. And this is the stack trace of my kernel, which we call the kernel stack trace. And if you do see that, if I go to my vmkernel.log file, it says that partition core dump has found. My ESXi host has booted and the core dump has found. So if you go to your vmkernel.log file, if you see this particular information, and this information we can also find it in your vmk summary.log as well, where it will tell you that the host has booted, and the reason why host is booted because there has been some core dump found. As soon as you see that the core dump found, which means that something went wrong with the kernel or the kernel has crashed, and you need to collect that core dump and you need to provide that core dump to your VMware team, or you need to raise a support request actually to provide that core dump. And if you want to know how do we go and create this core dump and all of those things, I think there's already a lecture where what I have uploaded on my YouTube channel. Just search for GoVMlab PSOD and you will identify that what is this PSOD, how do you go and understand this log file and extract the relevant log information. Okay. Now there are some more other reasons where your ESXi host cannot detect it, where your physical hardware is failing, right? Let's say my motherboard is crashing, right? So if your motherboard is crashing, ESXi cannot identify that. Why? What is the reason behind this host reboot, right? Because the hardware specific failure. If your hardware abrupt reboots can happen due to power outages. If you take out the power cable from the server, the ESXi cannot figure it out that it's happening because someone has took out the power cable, right? Because ESX cannot go and identify those kind of failures because it doesn't have understanding about your hardware specific failures, right? It might happen because of a faulty component and thermal issues. So in those cases, if you are not able to identify the root cause of the failure, even like with all the approaches I have explained you, it means that it is a time for you to call your hardware vendor, because some issues with your underlying hardware, which is not being reported to the ESXi kernel. And that is the reason ESXi kernel is not able to tell you the exact reason why the host has got rebooted. In those cases, like hardware faulty components, power outages, thermal issues, physical hardware issues, you have to log a call to your vendor, and your vendor would be the right person to identify that why your server is keep rebooting. Okay. Determining if a reboot is unknown is a process of elimination, right? So I think this is what this slide says, that it says that how would you know that my ESXi host has been rebooted for the known reason or unknown reason? So I think the very first approach, you should be looking at the vmk summary.log file, which would be logging all of those log messages, which I have already told you or which I have already shown you. Or you should also be looking at the vmkernel.log file. If these two log file doesn't give you any information about the host reboot, this is a time for you to go and log a call to vendor for those hardware specific issues. So that's how you can actually go and troubleshoot all of those ESXi host reboot or restart specific issues. Okay, so now the very last topic of our this troubleshooting session is basically vRealize log insight. So see, there is a lot of complexity in troubleshooting vSphere environment. Okay, the reason that you really need to see that there are a bunch of log files which I have shown you, vCenter log files. There are a bunch of log files present in your vCenter server, a bunch of log files on your ESXi host. Reading through every single log file, it's a really complicated task and requires a real expertise about the product, where you need to understand how my entire stack is working, and I really need to understand that how do I go and run the complex query to fetch the right information from these log files. And that's where you need to understand your Linux commands. You really need to understand the regex, the regular expressions in your Linux world, basically. So to get the right set of information from these logs. Now running those Linux commands, running those, getting familiar with these regular expressions, it's a complicated task. It's not something you can do it in a 1 or 2 day or 5 days of training program. It takes a lot of real expertise with these logs, analyzing these logs, and you should be knowing that what information I'm really interested into, right? So that's where VMware has, and the another problem is that just look at the scenario where you have hundreds of ESXi hosts in your environment, and you want to troubleshoot issues, right? But you don't know which host is causing that particular problem. Maybe there is a issue with your there is an issue with some network disconnection has happened, right? Because of which your VM loses the network connectivity. But how would you know that this disconnection has happened from which specific host, which host that VM is running? The one way is basically you log into your vCenter server, browse to that particular VM, which host that VM is running, and then you try to go to that particular host, try to see that what has been issues with that particular environment, right? And what if I have hundreds of ESXi hosts? I cannot log into every ESXi host and just running those queries and trying to figure it out or where the issue lies, right? I mean, you can imagine it will make things so complicated to troubleshoot these kind of scenarios, at least in the vSphere environment, when you have a bigger environment, a larger environment. So that's where what VMware has another powerful product called vRealize Log Insight. Now, the whole idea of this vRealize Log Insight is actually it gives you a much more intuitive tool or intuitive product where you can actually do where your troubleshooting gets really simplified. It gives you graphs, it gives you charts, it gives you statistics about your entire virtual infrastructure. And with those statistics, you can actually go and run some complex queries and fetch the information that where the issue has been occurred, what is the root cause of that particular issue in a much more easiest and simplistic way. I think I would say this is one of the most amazing tool if you really want to understand the vSphere troubleshooting, and you really don't want to go with the traditional way of troubleshooting the issues, the one what we have shown you so far now. Okay, the most intuitive way of troubleshooting your vSphere environment is this particular product. Get used to this particular product or get a mastery on this particular product. So what this product says that it is actually a machine generated log data is typically massive and scale difficult to manage and overwhelming. Obviously we know that, right? I mean, if you look at the one single ESXi host, it is generating humongous amount of log data every single second. Every single minute you will see that bunch of log informations are getting flooded in your environment, right? If you have a larger environment, then massive amount of data will be generated in your environment, and how would you go and manage that massive amount of data, and how do you go and fetch the right amount of information what you're really interested into from this massive amount of data, and how do you manage this particular data. And that's where this vRealize log insight really simplifies our life, right? How it simplifies our life is basically it provides a single location to collect, store, and analyze logs at scale. So you could say that it is your syslog collector, the one which I was talking about it earlier, right? Where you should have your own dedicated syslog collector, which is just responsible for collecting the logs and giving you a lot more insights about the data. That's what exactly the log insight is all about. It is your centralized syslog collector, which you put it in your infrastructure. It automatically, you don't need to configure anything. It automatically go collect the data from various sources. It could be your vCenter server, it could be your ESXi host, or it could be your VR ops, it could be your vSAN, it could be your NSX, any infrastructure. It will go and collect the logs from all of this infrastructure, put it into one centralized repository, and then it will start doing a lot of AI ML algorithms. So this particular vRealize log insight is not just like a syslog collector, which is just collecting the logs and keeping the logs like a dump guy into one specific repository. It does a lot of algorithm inside it, a lot of AI ML implemented right there into this particular product, which actually goes and try to start doing the mining of your logs. As soon as it receives the log from any of the log sources, it will start doing the mining of those sources, and it will start giving you a lot more intelligent, lot more elaborative information about your logs, events, and all those things. And it really helps us in simplifying or identifying the logs. Not only that, as I said, it is a log management solution, not only for your virtual world. Okay, this is the beauty of this particular product, which it gets integrated not only with the vSphere world, but also with your physical and the cloud environment as well. So with this one particular product or tool, you can not only manage, monitor, analyze, or debug your vSphere specific issues or virtual environment specific issues. You can also monitor your physical servers and the cloud environment as well. It's a one place to monitor everything. It helps monitor the events and metrics. It analyzes root causes and performs intelligent grouping, which help us to troubleshoot efficiently. That's what I said. This log insight has a lot of intelligence in it, which actually gives you capability. It actually go and monitor the events which are being occurred in your infrastructure. It analyze those events. It try to analyze those root causes from its machine learning algorithm, and it gives you some easiest way of understanding that what is going wrong with your infrastructure. Okay, so it really helps us to troubleshoot vSphere issues in a much more simplified way. It provides faster analytical queries. So as I said, it's analytical. It also has analytics running in it. Okay, it's not just collecting the data and just putting it some centralized repository. It actually collecting the data, running some AI ML algorithms in it, doing some analytics out of it, and then presenting this data to the end user in a much more elaborative, in an intuitive way. So as you could see that it actually go and provides you a more structured way of data. So a lot of unstructured data is coming from these various resources. It actually go and take this unstructured data and present this data to you in a much more structured way. So this is some screenshots what I have taken it for your reference. So as you could see that this is my vRealize log insight appliance. Okay, that's a dedicated product, dedicated appliance, a licensed product. So it will give you, as you could see that it actually gives you a dashboard. So now as you could see that it gives you such an intuitive dashboard that how many number of events have been happened in your infrastructure. Now every color coding is referring to one specific host. So as you could see that yellow is referring to my ESXi host, blue is referring to one of my ESXi hosts. So as you could see that it is giving you that pie chart, and this every color is referring to one specific ESXi host. So now you get your data in a much more intuitive way. Then it also gives you information about number of events over time. For this particular duration, what all the events have been occurred. Okay, then unique event types, what all the unique events which I am just seeing it on my infrastructure. Number of error events by host name, what all the error events are actually occurring on my infrastructure. And as you could see that in this pie chart, the bigger pie is actually contributed by this particular host. So now you got the idea that looking at this dashboard itself, you can easily figure it out that my infrastructure having issues, and majority of the error events are being triggered by this particular host having a blue color. And what is this host? ESX03A. It means that this is the host you should be logging into it, and you should start running some analytics, some complex queries to get the more information about those error events. That's the idea of this particular product. And if you do see that, it gives you such more capabilities where you can create custom dashboard, custom widgets. You can have a bunch of metrics which you can enable it into this particular product, and you can troubleshoot every single issue of your not only the virtual infrastructure, but also physical and cloud environment as well. And that is the reason, if you do see that, it not only interop with the VMware vSphere, VMware vSAN, or VMware VROps, but it also get integrated with your Active Directory or Windows system. It also get integrated with your Linux system. They have a concept of something called content packs. With that content pack, you can integrate a lot many products to this particular single product or single product what VMware is offering you. And then you can do you can run all these complex queries, which is, I would say, way difficult in the traditional Linux world by executing those commands, but it is most easy and pretty straightforward to write a complex queries in this particular tool in a very plain language. The next thing, if you do see that, as I said, it not only giving you the data in a much more intuitive way, but it also giving you the AI ML capabilities where it would be keep analyzing your data, whatever is being fed to this particular syslog collector. And that's where, if you do see that, in this particular section, it actually generating the chart. Okay, it is generating the chart of count of events over time. What all the events have been occurred. You could see that it is giving you the stats about your data every 5 seconds. And then what all these events, the information is presented right here, as you could see that. And then it also has something called a smart fields. The smart field is again one of the very powerful construct of this product, which really help you to write the queries in a much more easy way, and debugging these issues, not spending hours of time just troubleshooting the issues. This particular product really help us and reduce our time and troubleshooting VMware issues in a much more easiest and simplistic way. So as you could see that, this is what it's saying, that it's a 5 second thing. You could see that, and it giving you information about those events. Like, so if you could see that all of these events are coming from ESX04 host, and it is being initiated from the vpxlog, right? Now the third thing which I said, that it not only gives you vSphere capabilities, but you can also integrate your Active Directory logging, your Windows logging or Linux logging, or many other third-party product integration. You can do it to this particular product. Like, this was the example of Microsoft Active Directory integration. Similarly, this particular example of VMware vSphere. So VMware vSphere, as soon as you integrate your VMware vCenter server with vRealize log insight, it will start fetching all of the information about your environment and start presenting that information to you in a much more deeper way. Then it also has a support for containers. So even if you have a containers are running in your infrastructure, you can actually go and run these containers or agents in your infrastructure. So for the Windows machine, this is the MSI file. You just download this particular file into your host, and you should be able to vCenter log inside should be able to communicate to your Windows system. Similarly, there are RPM for Linux, Debian, or Linux binaries to integrate your vRealize log inside with your Windows or Linux systems. And this is one of the example where what I've done, it is basically I've integrated this vRealize log inside with my vCenter server. So if you do see that, this is my vSphere environment. So I've integrated vRealize log inside with my vCenter environment, and I can keep adding more vCenter server. So what if my infrastructure is having a more than one vCenter server, and I want to fetch all of this information at one centralized place? You can keep adding more and more vCenter server to this vRealize log inside. It will be reaching out to every single infrastructure and collecting the data and presenting this data in a much more intuitive way to you for better, to make our troubleshooting much more easy and efficient. Similarly, you can also integrate your vRealize operation. So vRealize operation is another powerful product which actually gives you, so vRealize log insight, what it does, it is mainly designed for unstructured data, where a lot of unstructured data is coming from various log sources. How do I go and make it streamline those unstructured data into the structured way? The vRealize operation only gives the structured data, your CPU stats, memory stats, and how do I take a decision out of those structured data? So once you integrate both of this product, once you integrate your vRealize operation product with the vRealize log insight, it's the best of the best thing you can ever imagine to troubleshoot your vSphere environment.
If you have interest in learning VMware more in depth, not from an administration perspective, but from the architect or consulting perspective, then join our VMware vSphere Zero to Hero Data Center Expert program. This particular program has been highly rated by all of our learners. 100 plus careers have been transitioned successfully with our Zero to Hero data center expert deep dive program with the 100% placement record. Now, what are the key highlights of this program? As you could see that it's India's first job ready VMware learning program, which has a 70 hours of intense learning with the 80 plus hands-on labs. 40 plus scenarios would be presented to a learner as a challenge questions to assess their learning. We do have a mentors having a 15 years of experience and the certified professionals. You would be getting opportunity to have a one-on-one in-person doubt clarification session with the VMware mentor, and this particular zero to hero program will also preparing learners for a L3 or senior level profiles. Now we have transitioned many careers with our deep dive program, and you can see some of the feedbacks right here on your screen. These are the feedbacks what we have received from all of our successful learners who has transitioned their career with us. So what are you waiting for? If you want to become VMware expert or want to master this technology, then call us now today on the given number, or maybe drop us email on the provided email address. Thank you.